Hey guys, Frosty Knives here with another book review, and today we are going to be reviewing the first book in Stephen King's Dark Tower series, The Gunslinger. There are two versions of this book, the original version and the revised and expanded version, in which he added some things, about 35 pages of manuscript, but we'll get into that. So, this was the first book in the series. This book clocks in at 300 pages even in my book. It's the shortest of all of the Dark Tower books, and it's the first of the Dark Tower books. He wrote this when he was 19, and it contains 5 chapters. The Gunslinger, the Way Station, the Oracle and the Mountains, the Slow Mutants, and the Gunslinger and the Man in Black. And all of the chapters except the Man in Black, the last chapter, chapter 5, were originally published individually in magazines back when he was 19, 20 years old, when he was selling stories to magazines. They were all individually published. And then when he decided to write the Tower, he took the 4 chapters and added the 5th chapter, and now we have the Gunslinger. The Gunslinger introduces us to Roland Deschain of Gilead, and his quest for the Tower. And the book starts, page 1, chapter 1. The book begins with one sentence, and that is, the Man in Black fled across the desert, and the Gunslinger followed. And thus, we start. We start with Roland's quest, Roland's look for the Tower, and what is he after. Chapter 1, which is called The Gunslinger, begins with Roland. He's crossing the desert. He's been chasing the Man in Black, and he stops in a little town called Tull to rest his mule, to get some provisions and whatnot. And it kind of delves a little bit into. Actually, he stops at he stops at a Outlander's post where there's this guy with his bird named Zoltan, to get to sleep and to eat and to rest. And while he's there, he tells the story of him passing through Tull on his way to get to this Outlander's house. And he tells the story of what happened to him in Tull. And the first real story we learn about Roland, he basically murders everybody in Tull because the Man in Black has left a trap for him. And they try to stop him from following, and in the process, Roland kills everybody. And so that's the first thing we learn about Roland, is that he's deadly, he's single-minded, and he's very obsessed. He's not going to let anything get in his way. So after he tells the guy the story of how he wasted Tull, Roland's mule dies, and he goes on foot. The next chapter is called The Way Station, and Roland is still moving along, and this is where we meet Jake. And he stops at this way station and for water and whatnot, and he finds this boy named Jake, and he hypnotizes him and tries to figure out where this boy came from. And we find out through the process that Jake is from New York, and that Jake was on his way to school when he was pushed in front of a Cadillac, and he died in New York. And he woke up in the way station, in Roland's world, in Midworld. And so he tells Roland the story, and Roland suspects that maybe he's another trap laid by the Man in Black. But he takes him with him. He doesn't want to leave him, and the boy doesn't want to be left alone, and he finds that he's a good kid, and it says in the book that Roland begins to love him as a son. So at the way station, he picks up Roland. The two of them now are heading west, following the Man in Black. The next chapter, the Oracle in the Mountains, they stop to rest again, and Roland winds up finding this speaking ring, and in this speaking ring is the demon. And the demon tries to seduce Jake initially, and Roland stops the demon and says, no, take me instead. So the demon winds up seducing Roland, actually has sex with him, and in return, Roland demands answers from the demon. And they talk about the Man in Black, who would pass that way again. And they talk about what he needed to do, and that's where the Oracle begins to tell Roland, there's going to come a time you're going to need to start drawing people. 3 is the number of your quartet, and they start talking a little bit about the next book with the drawing of the 3, and Roland begins to see more and more of what he's going to need to do, follow his quest in the tower. The 4th chapter is the Slow Mutants. Now, we're following them. We went from the desert through this little outland. We went through the way station. Now, the path that Roland is walking is going through the mountains. So they get into the mountains, and they're following these tracks, which are made by hand cars. And in the mountains are what Roland calls slow mutants. And they're basically what you and I know as things that have suffered radiation poisoning, that have mutated. They glow in the dark. They're all mutated. So we begin to see that Roland's world is a little bit like our world. At some point, there was some type of radiation thing going on. Roland always talks about the world moving on. And we see that in the past, that maybe their world, his world, was a lot like ours. Maybe there were wars and there were things and whatnot. So, also during the journey, Roland tells Jake a story about him being young and how he did his coming of age. And when in Gilead, and when Roland was 11, 12 years old, all the boys trained to be gunslingers. That's their job. And you find out that they're being trained by a man named Court, who's very brutal. And at the end, as the training progresses, the final thing that they do is they fight Court. And they either beat him and become gunslingers, or they lose and then they're exiled. And you find out that Roland was sort of manipulated into taking his test early, because his father's vizier, his confidant, sort of seduced Roland's mother. Martin seduced Roland's mother and kind of forced Roland to take the test early, hoping that he'll get exiled. And Roland did take his test early, and he didn't get exiled. He actually beat Court with his hawk, David. And so he actually became a gunslinger at a very early age, and he actually became the last gunslinger. So Roland tells Jake that story. And then they're passing through the mountains, and they fight off some mutants, and they get to a big chasm where they can't go in the handcart anymore. They got to go on foot, and they finally get to the end. And here's the trap that the Man in Black has laid for him. And he sees the Man in Black at the mountain, at the top of the cave, and Jake kind of slips off the side of the tracks, and he's hanging there. And Roland has a choice: save the kid, or follow the Man in Black. And the Man in Black taunts him and says, "You got a choice, Roland. Save the kid, and you'll never catch me, or let him go and come after me." And in the second brutal thing that we see Roland do, he jumps over Jake and leaves him to fall. And the last thing that Jake says to him is, "Go now, gunslinger. There are other worlds than these." Of course, he's torn up about it, but he's obsessed. He has to get to this tower, and he has to get to the Man in Black. So Jake dies again. He lets him go. It's sort of like his Isaac. And he gets to the Man in Black. And the last chapter, which is the Gunslinger and the Man in Black, is basically the Man in Black and Roland talking. And the Man in Black sort of enchants the night, and it becomes like eternally dark. And he kind of taunts Roland, and they talk, and he reads He reads Roland's future with tarot cards. See, I don't even need the book for this because I've read this book like 6 or 7 times. So he tells Roland's cards with the tarot cards. And the first card that comes up is the Hanged Man. And the Man in Black says, that's you. That's you, Roland. You're on your quest. Second black card that comes up is the Sailor. And he says, that's the boy Jake. The one you've already let drown. And then he pulls up the next card, and it's the Prisoner. And he says, this is a man that you're going to have to draw, that you're going to meet. He's a prisoner, and he's addicted to heroin. Of course, Roland has no idea what heroin is. He pulls the next card, and it's the Lady of Shadows. And he says, this is another person you're going to meet. She's two-faced. And, of course, we find out about these people in the next book. Pulls the next card, and he says, death, but not for you, Gunslinger. He pulls the 6th card, and it's the tower itself, and he puts the tower on top, completely covering the Hanged Man's card, and Roland says, what does that mean? The Man in Black doesn't tell him. And the last card he pulls out is death. And he says, death, but not for you, Gunslinger. So, the Man in Black says a lot, but he leaves Roland with all these questions. And he tells him that, you know, the tower that you're after, imagine that there are universes upon universes upon universes, all coexisting, all an infinite amount of universes. And at the center of each universe, the center of it all, hiding it all together like a linchpin, is the tower. And at the top of the tower, maybe you'll find the answers to everything, the Godhead, the world. And that's what Roland is after. And he doesn't even really know why he's after the tower, but he's after it. And so they have this, what they call this palaver, and they talk. And the talk that these two have lasts 10 years. So Roland is in this enchanted night for 10 years. And when he finally wakes up, he sees a pile of bones, which he thinks is the Man in Black, but he doesn't actually, he says, no, that can't be him. He must have left me another trap. 10 years have gone by. He's a little thinner, a little older, a little grayer. And then he leaves where they were talking. He sits down on the beach. And he stares at the ocean. And that's how the book ends. It's a great introduction to the tower because it leaves you with all of the questions. What is the tower? Why is Roland after it? But what we do know is that he's been after it for a very long time. A very long time. Could be decades. Could be 100 years. He's been chasing this tower. We do know he's single-minded. We do know he's obsessed. And we do know that he will do anything to get to the tower. He's already murdered all of Tull. He's already allowed Jake to die. And it's already hinted at in the book that he's done awful things in his past, which you get into eventually in some of the later books about some of the things that he's done. And while it seems that he's a cold-hearted bastard, it wears on him. He doesn't show the emotions, but you know that Roland is carrying literally a world on his back. So, the reason that there's 2 versions is because he rewrote this version to better blend with the rest of the Dark Tower books. This version, when you read this and then you read the rest of the Tower books, and it didn't jive. So he rewrote this book so that it flows better. He added about 35 pages to it, and now we have the Gunslinger, which has actually also been translated into graphic novels, if you're so inclined to read the comics. This is his magnum opus. This is everything encompassing for King. And if you've never read The Tower, I highly recommend that you do, because it is an amazing journey, and it is an amazing journey that you can read over and over again. This is about the 8th time I've gone through The Tower. I'm doing it again. Because it is that good, because Roland's world, Midworld, is fascinating. And it's just to see the journey and to go back. Once you know how it ends and to go back and read it, you get to pick out all the nuggets, all the hints and the things that King, the breadcrumbs that he's left through the series So this is a short book. This is an awesome book. This is a great start to the Tower series. I would give this about a 4 out of 5. And because there are better books in the series, and there are books that aren't as good in the series. The series as a whole is phenomenal, but some of the books are stronger than others. This is a great beginning. It was written when he was 19. It's a great start. It's an ambitious start. He gets 4 out of 5 for the Gunslinger. And we'll be back next time with the review when I finish of Stephen King's The Dark Tower #2, which is the drawing of the 3. Hope you enjoyed the review. And don't forget to click the subscribe button and leave a comment down below.